This is Awareness Explorers.
Well, welcome, friends and family of Awareness Explorers. I'm Jonathan Robinson. I'm with my trusty co-host,
BrianTomO'Connor.
And I am thrilled, excited, and just so honored that we have a guest teacher today that I have followed for, 15, 20 years. Hale Dwoskin, the person that is best known for the Sedona Method book and the Sedona Method method. Let me give a little bit of bio about Hale in case you aren't familiar with him. I'm sure most of our listeners actually are familiar with the Sedona Method, but for those who aren't, Hale is a New York Times bestselling author of the Sedona Method, and he's been featured in the movie Letting Go. He is the founder of Sedona Training Associates that teaches courses based on emotional releasing techniques inspired by his mentor, Lester Levinson, who also some of you know. Hale's an international speaker and featured faculty of Esalen and Omega Institute. He's also one of the 24 featured teachers at the popular movie, The Secret, as well as a founding member of the Transformational Leadership Council. For over 3 decades, he's taught the Sedona Method to individuals and corporations throughout the world. We're very excited to have you, Hale. Welcome to Awareness Explorers.
Oh, it's great to be here.
So I'll start off with the first question. First of all, I was reading your bio and I actually didn't know some things about you, but one of the questions I have really for a lot of our listeners who aren't familiar with the Sedona Method, I'm sure you've done this 1,000 times, but how would you describe the Sedona Method briefly in terms of what it's trying to do for people spiritually?
First off, the Sedona Method is a tool basically for anything, because what happens is, as a person, our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs, our ideas can often be the only obstacle to living life fully and to having, being, and doing whatever we choose. And most of us have, or many of the people listening, I'm sure, to this podcast, have a desire to discover the truth of who they are, to wake up from the dream of limitation. And so letting go can very much facilitate that, because it's the contraction of the holding on that distracts us from what is already. Freedom, beingness, awareness, love are all descriptions of this, that which is already happening. Not something that has to be gotten to. It's actually not something you can even get away from. It is this, whatever this is, including listening to the sound of this voice, including if you're watching this screen. It includes whatever you believe yourself to be in this moment, whether it's expanded or contracted, it doesn't matter. It is already everything and nothing. And letting go can really help that to be obvious. And so what it does is it's a facilitator or an opening or an opener to that which is already.
Yeah, one of the things I like about it is that it's not really adding anything. It's just letting go of the obstacles in the way of what's already here.
Yes.
And what's here is awareness.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's here is more than just awareness. Awareness is part of the sense of me.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us think that there's me and awareness, but what if awareness is just is still two? In other words, if I'm aware of anything, doesn't matter what it is, there's the other thing and awareness. But what if it's all being? It's all freedom. There is actually not a real, there's an experiential perception that I'm here and everything else is there, for sure. But what if all of that is just being? There is even the sense of I'm aware of something that is just being. And so when you allow yourself, well, first off, you don't need to allow that, it already is. But when there is an allowing, that can happen spontaneously. There's also can be a recognition that there's nowhere to go and nothing to do, because beingness, which is everything and nothing, already is.
So instead of a dualistic perspective of me and that, it's you enter into it's all one.
Well, you don't enter into it. but
Thank
again,
you for catching me.
No, it's okay. It's not. We're using language, and everyone listening at home or watching at home, don't try to change your language. It's there's no help in that. Again, language is just concepts it's just symbols representing concepts about that which appears to be, or what appeared to be. It's not even what is. You can't really describe what is, but you can describe what appeared to be in the past. So if we're using language, it's not an exact science, even though most of us act as though it is. We think it's very exact and very true and very real. But language is just symbols representing concepts. So you can't go into what already is. You also can't get out of what already is. It just is. And there's also no separate you. There's the experience of you, but there actually is no separate you to do either. Get into it or get away from it.
And how does the Sedona method lead us to it? I understand that there's an element of releasing, and that there are three different areas, which, at least in the original formulation, that we release. Could you lead us through a little bit about how that works?
Well, sure. From the perspective of a person, there is a problem and it needs to be fixed. So originally, the Sedona method was designed to help the person to fix the apparent problems. Even though that was dualistic, it's still, and again, I'm not saying this is the truth, but in my opinion, based on experience over 4.5 decades of doing this, when you let go, it's much more effective than any other way of trying to deal with the stuff that a person has to deal with all day long. And the three things you're referring to, are you talking about the wants? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. So there are actually 4 basic needs or wants or motivations that are the basis of this sense of me. The first one is wanting to fix it, change it, control it, understand it, do something with or about it, whatever it is. It could be anything happening in the world, anything happening with our feelings, anything at all. And the me is that. It is this sense of, it can't be this. It's got to be fixed or changed. It's got to be different than whatever it is. It doesn't matter. And even when it feels like, wow, I think I found it, I think this is it, then there's from the perspective of me, there's a trying to cling to it because it might go somewhere. I might lose it. So all of that is the basic one of wanting to fix or change or control things. And I'm sure everyone can relate to that. For the moment there is the body wakes up in the morning to the moment it goes to sleep at night. And even in our dreams, there is this sense of needing to be in control of something that's completely uncontrollable. It's just a happening. It's not controllable. It's just what's happening, or at least apparently happening. And so that's the first motivator that we help people address and release. The second one is people feel that we need love. Not that we don't actually recognize that we and you, me, all is love already, is already unconditional love. We think we can go get it. And we feel like we need to keep it. So we're trying to get love and admiration and being noticed or cared for or by, or any other synonyms, or just approved of or liked.
It keeps us busy.
What? Oh God.
It keeps us very busy.
Oh, very busy. So we're wanting love all the time. Whenever there's any kind of interreaction with apparent others. And as long as you believe there's a me, there's also this wanting love from yourself and a disapproval of yourself, because we've been trained to believe that if there's an apparent problem, it's somebody's fault. And for most of us, it's usually my fault. Or we're blaming circumstances. It's the weather's fault. It's our husband or wife's fault. It's the government's fault. It's the day's fault. It's the amount of time's fault. I mean, there's blame going on all the time. And this sense of blaming others causes us to think, or blaming ourselves causes us to think that we're in charge and we need to get this love, otherwise it won't be here. But it already is. This is love already. All of it, not just the parts you like. And that's hard to accept. We're willing to accept that it's the parts that it is the parts I like. You know, when it's a beautiful sunset, or I'm hugging my wife or my lover or my husband, it doesn't matter. We think that little thing is love, and we cherish that and try to hold on to it. And we think everything else isn't. But what if all of it is love? And then one of the main hooks for me as a person is this sense that there's not just life, there's me and my life, and there's all other life. There's two. And me and my life seems to be confined to this body. And that's a very scary position, because we hear that this body is not going to last forever. And we see evidence of that. And we see that so little needs to happen for this body to not be able to survive. So there's this ingrained deep sense of contraction or fear around losing my life and my body. And that's the desire to survive or be safe. So we address that as well. And lastly, there's this sense, if there's a me, there's a sense that there's other. So when there is a sense of other, we're either trying to merge with the apparent other, whether it be another person or the entire universe, or we're trying to maintain our space, to maintain our sense of separation. And that too is, just like the others, is an illusion based around this sense of me. So we also address that sense of wanting to be separate and wanting to be one. So when you focus on those, it tends to help the sense of me unravel. It tends to help the mind feel more at ease, quieter, more open, more alive. And all of that, though, is already wholeness. even the wanting approval, control, security, separation, and oneness is already wholeness. It's not like if you're not going to go to heaven if you don't release all your apparent limitations or your wanting approval, control, security, or separation, or anything else. Because first off, there really is no separate you to go to heaven. This is, at some level, already heaven. Except we don't like heaven because heaven's supposed to be all sweetness and light. But this heaven that we already live in contains all darkness, all hate, all things that we feel are awful, that we want to get away from. And as this is recognized, it feels more like heaven because it all is already this one unified beingness. And it doesn't need to be fixed or changed. It can be, and action certainly will happen through the body mind to fix and change things if it does happen. But it doesn't have to be. It just is.
You said that so eloquently, Hale, and a lot of different things. For me personally, I originally learned about letting go of control, approval, security, and then seems like separation and oneness were kind of added later, maybe as other aspects, which really helped me because I was kind of addicted to both of those in particular. Right. And I love the subtlety of noticing that there's so many things that we hold on to. And when you identify what you're holding on to, it's pretty easy to let it go if you see that it's causing you pain. I was struck by, in your explanation, maybe you're a little bit more non-dual than the early days of Sedona Method.
Yes. Again, what's happened, the way the Sedona Method has been taught, well, it was originally came out of the experience of my mentor, Lester Levinson. Lester Levinson, to just say very briefly, was someone who was sent home to die from a second coronary at age 52. And because of the intensity of the situation, he had a strong desire to find an answer. And he discovered that we all have this ability to let go. And he also discovered in the letting go process, he also discovered that there is no separation, that there is just beingness. And in that, his body corrected and he lived another 42 years after the doctors just gave him weeks to live. When I met Lester in 1976, there was already it wasn't called the Sedona Method, but there already was a system. And the system was designed, was all based around letting go and the wants and goals and decision making. But it wasn't, even though Lester was living non-duality, the people teaching it, he didn't teach it. The people teaching it weren't. And so it was taught in a very dualistic way. And but it was still incredibly helpful, incredibly helpful, as Jonathan knows, and Brian, you know too. But over the years, by 92, Lester knew he was going to be leaving the body, so he turned over all his teachings to me. And what happened then is, and he said to me, look, this process can be even easier, more direct. And he thought that it would be discovered. And what happened is, as I worked with people, as I took on this mantle, even though, I didn't do it, what happened through this body-mind is when people presented an issue, there'd be a response from here that helped them. And even though there wasn't me and it wasn't them. It was just what was apparently happening. And so the whole way this was presented kept evolving and getting simpler and more direct, more focused, and at the same time, much more non-dual over the years. It kept getting more and more non-dual. It's the latest iteration is that even the Sedona method, you can outgrow even that, because this is already wholeness. So even an amazingly powerful tool like the Sedona method, it's not something you need to throw out or get rid of, because it's still very helpful. But beingness doesn't need to let go. Wholeness doesn't need to let go. The one that all is doesn't need to let go. It just is. And when now the Sedona method is presented from that perspective, when letting go happens, it happens very deeply, very easily, with less and less process, more and more just something. It's more like a spontaneous happening. And at the same time, if you have the foundation, which is where the approval, control, security, and separation come in, the letting go, wanting those, it seems to make you, the parent, you much more open to this. It makes it much easier. And so there has been an evolution, but I really can't take credit for it, even though it happened through this particular body mind. It was just a response to what was needed in the moment. And when at first there was just letting go when this was given to me by Lester. And now there's letting go, there's welcoming, there's diving in, there's what we call holistic releasing, there's what we call the fifth way, which is, you mentioned awareness. It's using that sense of awareness as a tool to help separate the wheat from the chaff, to separate the sense of contraction from the pure awareness. But then beyond that, all of that is just beingness. And it doesn't need anything. It just is. So the Sedona method works at all those different levels. Although the last level, there's no work involved. And all of those are on some level like tools in a tool chest. So whatever's appropriate in the moment seems to come to the fore and is available for use.
I loved the way you talked about that. Maybe I might put it in different words.
Sure.
I know that some people think that they are going to let go. They are going to be the person, the thing, the entity that allows everything to be as it is. But I think of it differently. I think that there's something already within you, your true nature, the background of experience that has already let go, that already allows. So it's not Brian or Hale or Jonathan that does the letting go. It's that pure background of experience that has already let go. Is that a fair?
Well, it's closer.
It's closer. Okay, so let's get even closer.
Well, you can't get closer to what already is.
Right.
But again, that's how what you just described is what most teachers teach. Most teachers teach that there is this background that is already perfect. And the background is love. The background is beingness. The background is already released. The background is already pure acceptance. And as a working tool to try to deal with life, it can be very helpful. There's nothing wrong with it. It's beautiful. But what if there is no background? What if there's just this? Mm-hmm. And this is already beingness or wholeness. And what if this beingness or wholeness allows for all tools, allows for the dance of life where we think I'm doing it, or I'm going to surrender to the background, or the background is taking care of me. What if even that is pure being? Mm-hmm. So there's the nature of the sense of me is it's always going somewhere. Mm-hmm. It's either trying to dissolve into the background, or it's trying to get to more money or better health or better relationships or being more spiritual or enlightenment. But it's not this, it's that. Mm-hmm. That's the basics of that. It's not just this, it's that. And there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is this really can't be understood, but it already is. And yes, there is something, you can call it whatever you want, foreground, background, side ground, bottom ground, but there is something that already knows this, mm-hmm. that is already has no desire to seek, because it doesn't have desires. It just is. Mm-hmm. But this isness is not confined to a location. It's not confined in time. It's not confined in objects. And it's beyond, it includes all those things, but it includes, but it's not confined to the sense of me here and everything else there. Mm-hmm. And so that is already. Period.
And us even trying to, quote, be awareness or trying to do anything, be the background, is another form of me trying to get somewhere. And that is what's in the way.
Well, it's not even really in the way. That okay. is how beingness is appearing through that particular body mind. Mm-hmm. It's very relaxing when it is recognized that there is just beingness already. There is just this unconditional love already, because then there's nowhere to go and nothing to do to be what already is. Mm-hmm. And yet when the shit is hitting the fan, when someone's yelling at you, the car is careening out of control, there's a war, there's famine, there's global warming, there's not knowing how you're going to pay your bills, this perspective is not necessarily useful. But letting go is. If you feel like you're careening out of control in a car and there's even a little letting go, there'll be a remember, hey, turn into the skid as opposed to out of it. Because when you're panicking, you're doing the exact opposite. If you're struggling with making more money, there's usually on top of that all your self-judgments and all your fears about what's going to happen, and all you're blaming yourself for not doing it right. There's a whole story around it. And you can, so if they're in the middle of that, you can address that, wait a minute, maybe I'm not this story. Maybe this is just what's apparently happening. I'm not the story. And because I'm not the story, maybe there's something that can be done that will help. And so the Sedona method in it, from the basic all the way up to the fifth way, it helps you disengage from this story of suffering, from this story of life is out to get me. And when that happens, life seems to correct itself. Life seems to get better. Life seems to be more cooperative.
It's very mysterious. I've experienced that too. I just want to throw that in. that it's surprising and almost unexplainable, but it does seem to happen.
I wonder if you can talk a little bit about the fifth way. You've mentioned it a couple times, but
Sure.
even people who know the Sedona method don't always know that that's been a like evolution or a important addition to what we call the Sedona methods, really.
Right. It should be, you're right. It should be called the Sedona Methods, plural. But
Yeah.
we have a trademark on method. So the method contains methods.
Yeah.
So, I just, there was this description already that when something is needed, it's called forth. And so there, even when you're letting go of wanting approval, control, security, or separation, even when you're diving in or welcoming or allowing or welcoming both sides as in holistic releasing, there's still a sense of me doing it. So what you can do, still from a sense of me, you can use this, you can start to notice this sense of me and how it's not real. And you can also use this sense of a beingness or awareness as a it's not really being used, but it seems that way. It seems like you're using these tools to accomplish something. But I'll give you an example of the fifth way. So if you're just in this moment, just look to see if there appears to be, and everyone do this at home, look to see if there appears to be anything that feels not right, anything that's wanting to be fixed or changed. And if there is, just simply check. When something seems to be off, isn't there a sense of a you who wants it to be different than the way it is? Otherwise, it wouldn't seem off. So just check. Are you that thing that seems to be off? Or is there beingness or awareness? If you just simply check, there's this immediate sense, or there can be, it might take a few tries, there can be this immediate sense of relief. Because obviously, when you're angry, you feel like I'm the anger. It's even in our language. But if you just check, am I this anger? Or is there beingness? Is there awareness? When there's this feeling of opening and spaciousness and warmth and aliveness that just seems to happen spontaneously, and the thing that it was standing out from, like anger or fear or whatever it is, from this beingness, which it appeared, again, it didn't really stand out, but it appeared to be. When you ask questions like that, it just simply dissolves. And so that is the fifth way. And there are many simple questions you can use. Like one of the things when we think we have a problem is we're usually 99.99999, and I could go on for a long time, percent of the time. And the truth is, it's 100% of the time. But I'll allow for 99.99999 going on a lot of nines. You're referring to a memory. You're referring to what was, not what is. And so you can just check, is that actually here? Or is that just a memory? Or you can and in doing that, there can be this recognition that it's just a memory. It isn't actually here. And in noticing that, there's a dissolving. And there are many questions like that that just point to the obvious. And they're very freeing. Mm-hmm. Yet, now here's where the no way comes in, because yet even that, if you think that you're doing a tool, or you need to do a tool in order to be free of whatever that is, that's not wrong or bad, but that's still within this sense of me. And so it can also be recognized, and this is not something that can be done through a tool, but discussing it from this perspective is, there can be a resonance, or I don't know how else to describe it. It can be recognized by no one that even that is not necessary, because there is no separation. There is no me here separate from everyone else there. There is this, whatever it is, that's apparently happening.
It's so poetic. That in itself was a guided meditation, and truly right. Wonderful.
That was marvelous. But I am wondering whether you run into the situation where people will argue and say, "Well, wait a minute,
absolutely,"
and they put it all in their brains instead of in the experiential.
And that's why we keep going back to the experiential. Mm-hmm. We have this unique combination of things. Usually the pure non-dual message is taught in the context of, since there is no you, there's no one to do anything. And so all techniques are a waste of time. Don't bother. And the problem with that, for most people, that just is an argument. Or they get it intellectually, and then they think this is it. This conceptual framework that I have inside is that, but it isn't. It's not a concept. It's not something that can be let go of or held onto. So when there is the appearance of an argument, then all the tools are very helpful. Then, because the tools can appeal to the person, because the person feels back in control. Good, I can do this technique and I'll feel better. Mm-hmm. And that's a much easier sale. When there's nothing to sell, when there is already just this, and there is already no separation, that's too, for most people, and there's nothing wrong with that. You're not bad if you feel that way. For most people, they don't. Their the response is, no way, Jose. I could use expletives, but we're being recorded, and I don't want. And it is. It is natural to fight that, because if it's recognized, it's the end of the search. Mm-hmm. And
we like to search.
Yeah. From the moment there's waking up in the morning to the moment we apparently go to sleep, although we don't do any of that, there is seeking, there is striving, there is efforting, there's doing. There's all sorts of stuff that can feel really limiting. Mm-hmm. And to have tools to address that is a relief, a tremendous relief. And so while there is this sense of me, having tools for the me to use to make its life better is wonderful. Yet at the same time, none of that is actually real.
I like how you're saying that because it's so easy to get caught up in the tools and efforting that we forget that the basis of things and it needs to be balanced out with that point of view, or you're kind of using the tools in a way that can take you even farther away from what is real rather than what is that's always there.
Well, nothing can take you farther away or closer to what is. What is just is. So it's not a mistake to use a tool. Using tools happens. And if it's a really helpful tool, apparent really positive results happens. I mean, we actually digitized a lot of it, but we used to have filing cabinets full of people reporting all the benefits they were getting just from letting go. Mm-hmm. People corrected long-standing financial problems, long-standing relationship problems, long-standing health problems, although we never treated, diagnosed, or cured anybody. And that still happens. Mm-hmm. That is part of the reason that people do the Sedona Method, is because they can see real benefits, and it's wonderful. And yet, all that is still part of that story of me. Mm-hmm. And in recognizing that's all part of the story, it's not as urgent. It's not as life or death. And yet, it can still be happening. And it can be a lot more fun, too.
Mm-hmm. In recent years, I've noticed that people focus very much on somatic type things. And originally, the Sedona Method was very, asking certain questions.
Yes.
Have you, in your workshops and seminars, focused more on things like, I don't know, breath or sensations and movement as a way to help with releases?
Very lightly, but very minimally, because Lester used to say that tying anything to the physical is a reinforcement. Although in the beginning, we do use certain things because, for instance, if you're really not in touch with what you're feeling, then just putting your hand on your solar plexus and putting your attention there can really help you get in touch with the feeling. Mm-hmm. And also feelings, what we call feelings like apathy, grief, fear, lust, anger, pride, those feelings are really just sensations that we've made a story about. Mm-hmm. So like welcoming is one of the tools that we teach. And just what it is just welcoming or allowing whatever sensation, picture, or sound is arising in the moment. And the sensations are what's arising. So if the person allows them, they become less sticky. Mm-hmm. So there is a focusing on sensation. That's when you're doing releasing, any of the forms of releasing, there's definitely a somatic portion, but we don't emphasize that, only because then it all becomes as trying to manipulate. Again, I should take a step back. There's somatic processing is very helpful. Mm-hmm. I think people, if they're attracted to it, or if they're doing it, or if they're teaching it, they shouldn't stop. It's really good because it's better than just wandering around in your head. Much better. And for some of us, we need that in order to not be lost in just the spinning of thinking. Yet at the same time, it's only part of the picture. So we touch on it, but we don't emphasize it. We emphasize in the tool part of the Sedona Method. They're tools that are designed to produce not just a change in thinking, a change in the whole somatic experiencing of the body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Lester actually originally changed his consciousness by focusing on people that he loved.
Yes.
And yet that didn't seem to be what he, I took the Finder's course of 45 Days to Awakening. I'm not sure if you're that familiar with it, but they teach what's called the Lester Levinson method, which is...
Oh, the Finder's course. I interviewed him.
Yeah.
What's his name? I forgot.
Jeffrey Martin.
Yes, Jeffrey Martin. Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Great guy. And he teaches, spend a minute or two focusing on each person that you've loved or each person that's important in your life. And over like 45 minutes, you're just enveloped in love. And that's a very powerful thing.
Oh, yeah. Lester used to call that squaring all with love.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, again, one of the interesting things about the Sedona method, it has been incorporated into most people who, not many people out there who are teaching people how to let go are actually derivations of the Sedona method.
Right.
Much of what, I forgot his name already.
Jeffrey Martin?
Much of what Jeffrey teaches is a derivation of either the Sedona method or what he learned from other teachers. And it's a good distillation. But there are no finders. There is the end of searching. It can be discovered that there is no one to find anything. There is what is. And so that's that. I just want to throw that in. But to address this thing about love, even if you're focusing on human love, which is really not separate from the unconditional love that all is, it's just a very watered down version of it. Even focusing on that tends to cause a dissolving within the body mind of the sense of limitation. Then it can become a lot more aware of that one love that all is. And again, this is something that Lester taught even before there was a Sedona method. And so again, I'm not surprised. I forgot that he uses some of the Sedona method in the Finder's course.
Yeah, it's been a real plus to the course, and a lot of people have been affected by it.
Yes.
Any last questions, Brian, that we want to address before we go into meditation?
Well, it's been very interesting because, for example, your last question about the Lester love technique, I was about to open my mouth and ask the exact same question. And all evening, this has been happening. I had all these questions, and either Jonathan would ask it, or Hale, you would just come up with the answer without even my asking. So it's been kind of a delightful experience. And I'm also been very fascinated by seeing how, because when I first learned Sedona method, there were 3 wants, control, approval, and safety. And now hearing about the 4th, wanting separation, and then learning about holistic releasing, which is holding 2 opposites at the same time, which I loved. And then the 5th way, I'm just fascinated and gratified by the way it has evolved into something where limitations can be let go of.
Yes. It does seem to keep evolving.
Is there anything that you want to say that we didn't ask, or that you want to add to what you've already said?
We'll see. Well, before we get into any process, I just wanted to say to everyone, this thing that we've been talking about is pointing to something that is already known deeply there. that you're really not confined to that body mind. You're not just that. There is this one energy, this one beingness, this one aliveness, this one period that all is. And no matter how dark it seems, no matter how contracted it seems, no matter how lost you feel, that which truly is never apart from that. Never. And at the same time, because even when you feel really lost or alone, even when you feel like you can't have or be or do something you want in your life, there is still this one beloved energy that's living through that body mind. And all is well. It may not appear that way, but all is well.
That's beautiful. We're going to ask you to lead us in a guided meditation, although you've led us in a few guided meditations already, and I feel the effect of that. But
Yeah.
we'll formally designate that this will be a experiential guided meditation.
Okay.
And,
we'll do more of what we've been doing.
yeah, exactly.
It's okay by me.
Okay, sure. So generally how we feel, and by the way, you can do this with eyes open or eyes closed, it doesn't matter, because if there's a focusing in or a focusing out, it doesn't, there is just this. So and it's also very helpful to recognize that you don't need to pull away from what is in order for what is to be. It just is. So generally, though, we are when we feel like a person, we're in motion. And so I'll give the person something to do to start out. In this moment, could you just simply pause or stop and notice what is? And or just simply be what you are. Now that isn't actually required, but just in doing that, or thinking you're doing it, there is a shift. And could you, just as a way to start out, could you be open at least to the possibility that what we've been talking about over the past hour or so is actually possible? What if, just what if, this is already wholeness? Is already beingness? Is already aliveness? Is already unconditional love? And yet it doesn't always feel that way. There can be this feeling of I need to find it or get it, or this can't be it, or it hurts too much, or I feel alone, or I need more money or better relationship or better health. All that can arise as well within this one beingness. And if any of that is arising, Could you just welcome it? Is it allowed? Is it what's apparently happening? And then when there's an arising that doesn't feel perfect, which is most of the time, there is an overlay of wanting approval, control, security, separation, or oneness. There's an overlay of wanting to do something with or about it. So could you just allow that? Welcome that. Is that allowed? Is that what's apparently happening? And then all of that comes from a sense of ownership, a sense of me, my life, my problem, my thought, my feeling. And could that be welcomed too? Could that be allowed? Is that too just what's apparently happening? And then if there's still any holding on or holding back that you're aware of, as best you can, just for now, could you let it go? Just could you? Would you? When? And then whatever is in this moment, check to see if it has any boundaries. Can you actually find a boundary to this? Or is it boundless, timeless, spaceless, being? And let's run through that again. If there's anything at all about what's apparently happening in this moment that feels separate, that feels contracted, that feels limited, that feels incomplete, could that be welcomed or allowed? Is it welcomed? Is it what's apparently happening? And is there any wanting to do anything with or about that on any level? And if there is, could that be welcome too? Could that be allowed? Is it welcomed? Is that what's apparently happening? And is there any sense of I, me, or mine? Any sense of ownership? And if so, could that be welcome too? Is that welcomed or allowed? Is that what's apparently happening? And then if there's still any sense of limitation, if there is that welcomed or allowed? And then could you let it go? Just could you? Would you? When? And this, whatever is, does it really have a location? Does it have a beginning or an end that can be found? Or is it already everywhere and nowhere? Is this wholeness, completeness, unconditional love, beingness? Is this all and nothing at all? Okay, good.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Oh, thank you both.
That
It's been fun.
that was amazing. I wasn't sure I was ever going to a sense of me come back from that. Anyways, that was a real gift, and I do want to do a quick shout out to the Patreon supporters that you make this possible. So thank you. And if you want to know how to get extra stuff from us, go to patreon.com/awareness explorers, and it's all spelled out on that page what we give you for your support. But Hale, you've definitely supported my life and Brian's life and thousands of other people. I know how grateful I am and so many people for you, not just spearheading this work, but letting it evolve through your body mind. It's really just so grateful for all that you do.
Yes, and for anyone who first got to know Sedona Method, as I did 15 years ago, look into it again and see how it's evolved. And Hale, how can people learn more about it?
Oh, it's just very simple. You can either go to sedona.com, just like the city, sedona.com. We also have our own podcast, which is Letting Go and the Greatest Secret. And I do some of the podcasts that are just me speaking. And then I interview a lot of people like Jonathan and other people in this space. We have a Facebook page, The Sedona Method, on Facebook. And there's also a group. And we also have hundreds of free videos on our YouTube channel, The Sedona Method. So just remember Sedona.
It's an embarrassment of riches.
Right.
Yeah. And a great book called The Sedona Method.
Oh, yes. Yes. The book is available wherever wherever books are sold.
As well as Happiness is Free.
Oh, that's right. Yes. I forget. Yes. There's two books, actually. There's Happiness is Free and It's Easier Than You Think, which is actually 5 books combined into one. And it doesn't have just the Sedona Method as it's evolved here, but it also has how Lester taught before there was a Sedona Method. Mm-hmm. And it's beautiful. It's mostly Lester in Happiness is Free, just a little bit of Hale.
Great. Thank you so much. Wonderful talking to you, Hale. I really appreciate your joining us. And I can't wait for our listeners. Yeah, and I can't wait for our listeners to hear it.
And even though I know a lot about the Sedona Method, I got some new angles and new, really wonderful stuff today. So thank you, Hale. And to all our listeners, keep exploring.
Keep exploring.
Thank you for listening to Awareness Explorers. To learn more, you can check out our website at awarenessexplorers.com. Please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app. We'd love it if you would post a review. And please share our link on Facebook and with family and friends, because knowing yourself as awareness is the greatest gift you can give yourself or someone you love.